59. Okay. I just need to hit the mute immediately so I don't feedback. That's why
Yeah,
I'm asking
hello.
you for the countdown.
10 seconds.
Okay. '59. Okay. All right, everybody. Welcome to the latest edition of the Daily Gooner Pod, a special Sunday evening pod or Sunday afternoon, depending on where you are. Regular group is here, joining you from the United States. Very sad person. I should be driving to the Orlando Stadium right now to see Arsenal play Inter, but that was not to be. But anyway, I'm Raphael. Joining me from London, our regular co-host above me in my totem is Ryan. Welcome, Ryan.
Hello, Ref. Hope you're doing well.
I am well, thank you. A little sad, but I'm well nonetheless. And beneath me is Sam. Welcome, Sam.
Hello, mate. Thanks for having me back.
Always, as always. All right, a lot to discuss. I guess the topic we'll begin with is the window is starting to creep it's closer to ending than it is to opening, and Arsenal find a logjam. Gentlemen, but let's start with the good news. A lot of moves, lots of ins, lots of outs. The big story, I guess, of the week was the quashing of that awful Emil Smith Rowe to Villa rumor that was just metastasizing on social media. I think you've been saying it here on the pod. We've been saying it on our website, on our Twitter feed for weeks. He signed an extension. Ryan, what was the genesis of that? I mean, it seemed that this was a done deal at the end of the season, the beginning of the summer, and then there was a snag.
Yeah, pretty much his agents realised that he outperformed our expectations, so he rightly deserved a pay rise and a significant one, which we believe is around 70 to 80,000 pound a week. So yeah, the Aston Villa stuff, I still think it was agents pushing Arsenal to finally offer what Smith Rowe is, what he feels he deserves, and it's hard to say that he didn't deserve it after pretty much single-handedly changing our season. And he's taken a number 10, which is quite nice to see.
Yeah, Sam, one of the least or the most poorly guarded secrets was will he or won't he? All the chatter on social media is he going to have the number 10. He was wearing the number 10 on his practice top. Now he's got number 10. Arsenal's going to recoup a lot of that money just right there with the number 10 sales with the new kit coming out.
Yeah, it's guilty for me as well because I've since I see that I was like order that. So yeah, it's a big number for him. Arteta's come out and said that he asked for it, so it's going to be big pressure on him given the names that have worn the number 10 previously. But I think Emil's more than capable to hold that and continue with it. So it'll be interesting to see how he performs next season. But I do think, and Ryan and I've thrown this around a lot over the last week or so since it's been announced that if say Madison was to come in, it'd be up to Emil to step up and raise some levels because obviously players want to be starting and it's a big intent by the club to put faith in him. But if somebody else comes in, he's going to have to raise the level to get the starting spot.
Okay. Staying with that topic, Ryan, this raised an either or among a lot of people, certainly among a lot of journalists. Seeing Smith Rowe take the 10, I think a lot of people assumed that he would be the understudy at the 10, or he would be, playing on the wing and sometimes rotating in as the 10, that Odegaard was the preferred number 10. And then for a while, there were some other names. And then obviously right now, James Maddison is the name of the moment. But immediately upon the announcement and the introduction and all the press of him in the 10 shirt, this meme took flight that, well, because he's now the number 10, Arsenal's not going to pursue another 10. And we should just put any dreams of adding Maddison to the attack aside. In your mind, does this kill that, or is that just social media chatter?
Well, I tweeted it out at the time and I said Arsenal went into this summer, into the transfer window, with the expectation that Smith Rowe was staying and they still wanted to target a number 10, because I think what Arteta wants is Smith Rowe as the wide playmaker on the left, similar to how Robert Pires was, where he drifted in and created like that. So I think Arteta has such a positional fluidity and versatility in formations that Smith Rowe could either be the number 10 or be the wide playmaker. So either way, he's going to be starting in one position, and I don't think it's either or. I was toying with the idea of him being the number 10 after watching his interview and just heart bursting with pride and proudness from watching him being our number 10. I was like, can he just be our guy? Can he be that guy and buy someone to back him up? But thinking about it realistically, we need someone that's going to push him to the next level and him push the other person to the next level. And at the end of the day, that makes us a lot better.
All right. And Sam, let's keep it with a theme. The team has re-signed Saka and Smith Rowe to extensions. A few months earlier, they had signed in the middle of the season Rob Holding to an extension. Looking at the homegrown talent that's come up, obviously they've got Tierney secured. Another name about to be added. So far, the biggest buy. Rumors, well, not rumors, actually news leaking now that James White or Ben White, sorry, is an Arsenal player now. It's just all the formality. The medicals have started, but that's another piece of Arteta's young English or British core. We put Tierney in there. That seems that he's got a plan.
Yeah, absolutely. People find that I wrote around this previously, probably a couple of months ago now, when the rumours were flying about Ben White. It's as I say, that's on our website under the remake of the British core. But yeah, Arteta's got an idea of what he wants. He wants essentially a core of English players. One thing that's been levied at Arsenal for a very, very long time is that we've always been essentially the foreign club in the Premier League. But with the emergence of Saka, Smith Rowe, then you've got Tierney, Ben White coming in, potentially Maddison coming in as well. It's really encapsulating the English grit that we've essentially lacked for a long, long time. And we are targeting the right types of people, and the profiles of people are the ones that are going to elevate this club essentially. And I said before that I think these signings are the foundation signings. Obviously, you've still got Callum Chambers, Rob Holding, might be a few question marks over them, but the foundations are essentially there. So if this summer we can get the English core, so to speak, in, along with we've got Traveres and Lokonga in as well, then we're able to really push on, hopefully secure top four, or be top four, top five. If it's top five, then it has to be with silverware as well, for me. But I think Arteta essentially knows what he wants. We're going full steam ahead. I don't think that we are going to be essentially missing out on players. And Arteta's got the plan. And if plan A don't happen, plan B will be soon following up.
But let's stay with that theme. Last year we saw what he really did to elevate the value of his lineup was he took Saka, who was just a kid coming into the season, Smith Rowe, who was, they were bench players at the beginning, and by midseason they're starters. By the end of the season, they're vital players. Who is his target? I mean, we know Arteta can develop his young talent that comes through the academy. Is this Balogun's year to be the next one of those?
Potentially. But I've said previously, I think this year around Balogun will be probably getting minutes off the bench and starting in cup games. A lot of it's going to revolve around what happens to Lacazette and Eddie Nketiah as well. Because again, that's a hold up in the pecking order, so to speak, at the moment. I think if them two go, Tammy Abrahams comes in. And if that is the case, Ryan previously that he could see Aubameyang being on the left wing and Tammy starting up front if he comes in. And if that is the case, then potentially Balogun will be the one coming in to replace Tammy with like 15, 20 minutes to go. And that would be beneficial for his development. Ryan and I have had a conversation about this previously, but obviously I'll let him expand on that a bit later. But ultimately, Balogun will be, I believe he will be in and around the first team and he'll be involved in some games.
All right, you just raised another sore point, something we were talking about before we went on air. Ryan, I'll bring this to you. As Sam said, Tammy Abraham could be another target, another English target. Obviously, Ben White's coming in. James Maddison could be the next to follow White in the door. But Arsenal are facing a very serious problem halfway through the window that they faced last window. And that's simply that, we were expecting with COVID conditions easing, that it'd be easier to move players out, clear space, and bring a lot of players in. It's pretty clear with, the moves for players like Manuel Locatelli, Ben White's going to cost 50 million, that they're looking at perhaps 40 million for Tammy Abraham. Maddison could cost 60 or so. The club has got money to spend, but you can't bring in players until you take players out. And Arsenal, again, seems for the umpteenth time is having a horrible problem getting players out. Let's begin with the never-ending saga now, it seems, with Granit Xhaka, who's still on the Arsenal books.
Yeah. It's just the same thing every season for us, isn't it? We have to shift bodies to bring in the players that we want. Last summer we had to get rid of Torreira, Ozil, and Socrates, and someone else. I think it might have been Mustafi. Kolasinac, right? Yeah, and we didn't. And we ended up not registering some players, which caused backlash in the dressing room, which then deharmonized the side. Because if you look at the dates of when we started losing games, it coincided with the registration date. And that's when the harmony in the squad was a bit broken. People causing troubles behind the scenes. So
leaks to the press, right.
Yeah, we can't go through that again. And it's vital. It's almost as important as bringing in the right players as it is moving players on. The likes of Granit Xhaka, I think he's one of my favourite players. He's on the back of my shirt, but I think it's time to move on. Torreira, another one. It's time to move on from him. And they're still here. Bellerin, Lacazette, and Nketiah. There's been no concrete news of them leaving yet, and it's quite worrying.
Well, to that end, I was looking at this. Sam, I'll bring this to you. Again, it takes two to tango. And as much as we want to grind our teeth about Roma being cheap and if you're following the Locatelli saga, and we'll bring up Locatelli in a few minutes, of how Juve seem to be his preferred destination. It looks like it's going to be his ultimate destination, but they're being really cheap in how they're dealing. Arsenal are putting money up front because they've got money, and Juve is trying to work all these deals with player options and 2-year deferrals. But if you look at the European landscape, there's just not a lot of money to buy. If you look at Spain, right, Barca are having to do loan deals or freeze. Messi's had to take a huge pay cut to stay. Right now they have an embargo. They have to move players out before they can move players in. Real's in the same position. They want to go out and get Mbappe, but they can't afford him until they sell players, and nobody wants to buy their players. Right? In France, PSG bought Hakimi for big money, but nobody else has money. And in Italy, it's pretty clear that if they're not doing swap deals, they're not making big buys. I mean, Inter was happy to sell Hakimi to PSG for big money because that let them keep the rest of their squad together. But nobody's really got the money to throw around. It does seem that the money, if Arsenal want to move players, either got to do loan deals or, Ryan and I were discussing this, Sam, the way to make money this summer is to sell your English players, your English surplus to English clubs, because the Prem clubs have money.
Yeah, yeah. I'd go along with that. I think, to be perfectly honest with you, in terms of players going to European teams, just take what you can get this year. We know that we're going to be taking hits on these players. There's stigmas around these players. Like, let's not beat around the bush with these players. These are players that have gone from a top four club down to consecutive eighth place finishes. They're not a what's the best way to put this? They're not a desired signing by the majority of the clubs out there. There may be one or two that will go, he can fit into our system. He's got the talent. But to take Torreira, for example, when he first come to Arsenal, brilliant. Then Unai Emery hit and he's fell off a cliff since then. So is a club actively going to look at him and go, he's going to be the man to starting our midfield? Highly unlikely. They're probably going to be looking at these players and go, they could be a squad player. If they come and do well, then they'd be starting. So in that aspect, these players are not going to command high fees. Granit Xhaka, on the other hand, potentially you could argue and say he's been a pivotal player to Arsenal. And when he's out of the team, then there's a big problem for Arsenal. But unfortunately, the way that certain things have developed across his Arsenal career and the stigma that the English media's attached to him, again, it's one of the ones. Is he really that desirable? Because he's not really getting any other offers across Europe. He seems that is Roma or pretty much anything. That's it. In regards to the English side of things, if we're looking at Joe Willock, for example, we've all banded the figures around 35 million, which we think that we should be getting. But then you've got Newcastle saying, well, it's a COVID year. We're playing a bit of poverty here. No, I'm sorry. If you can't afford him this year, in my opinion, I think we should be doing a loan with obligation, because you're going to have the fans back. You're going to start having that revenue coming back into clubs this season, touching wood that another lockdown don't hit. So if that's the case, potentially they're going to have the money next year. So I don't know. I should say it's two to tango. I think this market's going to be garlic or Edu in trying to
touch on them very quickly before we move on to better news. Then there is better news. Sam talked about Joe Willock, but Ainsley Maitland-Niles does, it seems, have a market for him. Reece Nelson could have a market. Eddie Nketiah could have a market. Those four players could bring Arsenal a substantial return, even if they're not commanding sky high. As long as they're dealing, as we said, it seems the money is in the Prem, because the Prem's got the best TV deal in world football. Deal with the Prem.
Yeah. I'm guessing that was aimed at me.
Yes.
Yeah, and Eddie has a market. We know that. Palace, Brighton, Southampton, West Ham are all inquired for him. Nelson, Brentford, Brighton, again, Leicester, potentially. Niles has got premium of Premier League clubs, Burnley, Leicester, Southampton as well. So these players, they do have a market. So for me, we just need to say to them that the price is 30 million, but realistically, we want 20. That's how you sell, in my opinion. Is you start high and then negotiate lower to the price that you actually want. So I think we could get the price for those players. And as me and you spoke about before we came live, we could potentially get 80 million from just those four players.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's not impossible. So,
and that buys a lot. I mean, that pays for Ben White, and that covers, Sam, the expenses for Arsenal's, one of Arsenal's first signings. Let's talk about the two kids that came in. We don't want to just brush them aside, because we saw Nuno Tavares score a goal in his debut with Arsenal, and it was in a friendly. It's not the highest level competition, but still, you want to see your new signings kind of take initiative, and he was very aggressive. A lot of pleasant surprises, a lot of warm comments about Albert Lokonga over his play in Arsenal's most recent friendly a couple of days ago. I think people are having to temper their enthusiasm. Like, Arsenal may have something really special here, so long as we don't overburden him with unrealistic expectations.
Yeah, I'll start with Tavares first. I think with Tavares, he's going to be a big asset to Arsenal this season because we all know when Kieran Tierney got injured last season, it was a bit like, ah, shit, what are we doing now? Do we try Cedric here? He done okay, but we become unstuck because his playing style doesn't match that of Kieran Tierney's. Same with Granit Xhaka. Selfishly, he offered to go and do that role. He done it to the best of his abilities, and I thought he played quite well there. But if you're looking at Tavares, he's a little bit less, but he's on the same trajectory of Kieran Tierney. So it's a like for like, essentially. So if we do need rotation or we do need to put him in because Tierney's got injured, then it's a like for like. Don't have to alter the system at all. And as you say, he's very aggressive. He's absolutely rapid. He's what, 6'6", 6'1",
6'1", I believe, yeah.
and he's got a final ball on him. When he gets to the byline or gets into crossing position, he picks his head up and picks people out. So it doesn't alter our system. It just replaces and eases him in. And I think once he and Sambi Lokonga get adapted to the Premier League, it'll be big pluses because we've said for a long time that our second string is not strong enough. These two instantly come give us the squad depth that we need. And I said about Lokonga, I think within 6 months he's probably going to be a starting fixture for us in that centre of midfield. He looked like he's the sitting player, so essentially a 6 that we're looking for in midfield. He's very happy to come and collect the ball from the defence. He's always offering. He's demanding the ball. He's not one of these people like El Neni that will do sideways backwards. He gets his head up and wants to pass the ball forward. He's very articulate in when he plays the ball and also who he's playing it to. He uses his frame also. If he's under pressure, he doesn't get panicked. He uses his frame to say, you know what, I can fend you off and I will use it to shield the ball and then move away from you because he's got a quick turn of pace on him as well. And I really do think he's got a bit of Diaby about him in terms of his size and stature. And I think if Arteta can work with him as well to use that a bit more, that'll be beneficial. And if you're going to be partnering him and Partey together in the midfield, I'd hate to be the opposition midfielders in years to come because these are the type of players. Like, it reminds me a bit of a Vieira Gilberto Silva partnership. It just works, and to have physical, imposing guys that's able to play the ball, recover, be athletic enough to get up and down the pitch, and that's something that we've been complaining about for what, 4 or 5 years now, that we haven't got the athleticism in the middle and midfield to recover when we're on the attack. And if them two are in, and if we were to get somebody else in as well, then it works because Arteta's looked for profiles, and it seems that the scouting department and the analytics have done absolute wonders getting these two people in. So props to them. You know, it will be beneficial to Arsenal moving forward once they're both adapted, and I see very promising careers for them.
I'm going to take the baton from Sam and pass it to you, Ryan, because I didn't get to see the match live, but I've seen lots of cut-ups and I've watched them several times. And with Lokonga, what got my attention was, as Sam said, he was very decisive. He got the ball and he was looking, he wasn't looking to pass sideways. It wasn't just, I'm going to keep it moving, so you're going to give it to me and I'm going to give it right back to you. It seemed like every time, if he wasn't making a one-touch pass and he had to take a second or a third touch, it was to move laterally so that he could give himself a lane, because every pass was going to go forward and it wasn't going to go 5 yards forward. He was looking 15, 20. He was looking to get fullbacks just bombing down the wings. He wanted to move it. And then I'm combining that with Ben White, who we were talking about in the last session, that's one of his skills, that he can either play it out or bring it out. And now it seems in the center of the park, now you're looking at you can see kind of that has to be the Arteta vision, players who are just going to, with the skill to advance the ball either in tandem or on their own and rapidly.
Yeah, and I think that was one of our main issues last season when David Luiz was injured. We had no one breaking the lines. We had no one pinging the ball into our attacking midfielder and making them turn on the ball. And that was our issue. And we had no midfielder making the right passes forward. What I noticed about Lukonga's passing forward, as you mentioned there, every pass had a purpose. It had pace on it. It had the right weight, so the player receiving it could receive it with his on the turn, or so the player could receive it properly. And I loved it. Every second that he got the ball, he was looking forward. He picked his head up. He was spraying balls cross field, through the middle, through to Smith Rowe, to Tierney, to Tavares. And I haven't seen passing like that from one of our midfielders for a very long time. Xhaka does it, but he doesn't do it consistently, and not to that standard either. The passing through the lines, there was one pass where he actually fizzed it through, I think it was 2 or 3 midfielders straight to Smith Rowe, and we're on the counter attack. I think it might have been Pepe's goal actually, and he just fizzed it, and it's that knowledge of what kind of pass, the pass selection at the right time, is what we lack sometimes. With El Nene, you said it yourself, doesn't pass forward. The pass selection and the confidence of making those sorts of passes we don't have. And well, we do now, but I think as Sam said, 6 months to a year, I think he'll be pushing for a starting place in our lineup.
And Sam, it's just the nature of the pass. I mean, we've seen David Luiz and Xhaka when they're on, and they can chip it, they can arc it over to the edges, to the wings. Lukanga plays very much on the floor. These are just, as Ryan said, fizzed, but like just direct, hard and direct.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something that we need, because you think about the games where we think, okay, we can get at this team if we can turn their midfield around. Because if you cut out a team's midfield, you're bypassing them, you're attacking 3, maybe 4 up behind the line, and they're straight onto the defence. So instantly there's panic in the opposition because their midfield's having to turn around. The defence then drops off, leaving our attackers some space to operate in. And essentially, if you've got 4 attackers against 4 defenders, you're essentially 1-on-1. They can't have another attacker come out, step out to the attacker, because you'll just play round them and then you're in at goal. So if we can utilise his skill set properly, and with the players that we've got that can play on the counter attack, it'll be deadly. And as well as that, he's not scared of a challenge either. He will literally go in for any ball that's there and try to nip it. And if we've got him and Partey high up the pitch, we win that high up the pitch, again, you're straight at their back 4. So with that, you're able to then isolate, overlap, and flood the box. Hopefully with Lacazette and Eddie going, and bringing in someone like Tammy Abrahams and Balogun, you got in Tammy somebody that's able to utilise his height and bully people and pin the defenders. Balogun's very, very good at pinning defenders and rolling them, as well as picking out and ghosting in. Both of them are good at picking out and ghosting into certain situations that enables them to pull off a defender or dart in front to have a shot or header at goal. So if we're going to be going down the route of going down the wings and crossing, it's big pluses to us, rather than just seeing Lacazette trying to get onto the end of it, seeing Eddie just floundering around in the 6-yard box trying to poach. it gives our crosses purpose and where they're going, and especially with the crossing ability of both sides. If Chambers and Cedric are going to be our right backs moving forward, and Tavares and Kieran Tierney, crossing will have purpose. And then if you combine that with potentially Maddison and Smith Rowe in as a 10, they can play intricately in and around the box so that they can play into potentially Tammy, Balogun, or Aubameyang, play the intricate football that we used to under Arsene Wenger, and then still have the security of, say, Ben White, Gabriel, and Lukonga as a three at the back, or Lukonga and Partey higher up the field, being that shield. It makes for promising play, and it looks very promising moving forward. And it's actually getting to see the blueprint of what Arteta wants already in pre-season, and it just now needs to translate into the season with the relevant signings.
Right. And Ryan, but staying on this though, Albert Lukonga, as exciting as he is, still a teenager, probably a bit too much responsibility to hang on this young man walking straight from the Belgian league into the Prem and into a starting position. That I'm sure that's not the plan that the manager wants. The team is focused on other names. Coming into the summer, Yves Bissouma was assumed to be the primary player primary target anyway, who would partner with Thomas Partey. Seems that Arsenal's attention with Brighton was really on Ben White, but Ruben Neves from Wolves was then kicked around as a target. Now it's been clear for the last month that their primary target, going through Euros and up to now, was Sassuolo's Manuel Locatelli. I've been following that story very closely. Arsenal have been kind of in a butting heads with Juventus, who also want him. Juventus trying to go the cheap route, the 2-year option, the 2-year loan with option at the end. So Arsenal have put 40 million euros on the table. Sassuolo obviously wants that. The player who grew up wanting Juve, rooting for Juve, wants Juve. It looks like it's finally worked itself out, because it does seem, and this is kind of going to frustrate Arsenal fans, Spurs have a hand in this. With the money they're apparently going to get from the Harry Kane sale, they've gone after an Atalanta striker. Atalanta are going to look to Juventus and buy a player off their roster with that money that they're going to get in that buy for about 40 million. And that's going to give Juventus the money that they did not have, the cash at hand, to finally go get Locatelli. I'm tired just thinking about it. But if Locatelli is finally off the table, number one, was it really a waste for Arsenal to go after him? I mean, I don't think so. But secondly, if Locatelli is no longer priority A, who's priority B in your opinion?
No, I don't think it was a waste of time, really, because if you get him, you've potentially got one of the best midfielders in the world joining you. Like, certainly in the last year or so, I know full well, as Sam will vouch for, I was watching Sassuolo quite a lot last season for Jeremy Boga, the Ivorian winger. But Locatelli caught my eye so much, and from then I've maintained that if Granit Xhaka left Arsenal, Locatelli is the one. And the Euros has just backed my thoughts up even more. So pursuing him was the right decision, because if you get him, it's a great deal, especially for £36 million. And but if we can't get him, which looks like the case now, I think for me the next option should be Ruben Neves. I think he fits that profile of a leader. Arteta said last week that he wants leaders in the side, leaders through senior players, which we know Ruben Neves is only 24, but he's played in the league a few seasons, he's played in the championship, so he's got that leadership quality. He's a ball player, which is the profile that we kind of need now, because I think with Lukonga we've got that athletic, ball-winning, ball-playing number 6, so I don't think we'll be looking at Bissouma anymore. I think it should be either Neves. If we can, I would also go for Camavinga. That is a dream, but either between them two.
also another teenager. Nothing wrong with, he's a very talented player, but that's a be really bold, Sam, to kind of build your summer around not just kids but young kids. At which point is that just putting too much weight on teenage shoulders, in your opinion, or would you go with that Kamavinga? I don't want to rule that out.
Yeah, no, I'd definitely go for Camavinga if it's on the table. I'd definitely be going there. I hate this phrase so much, but he is generational. He's somebody that if you can screw him now, get say 5 6 years out of him, you could potentially sell him to Real Madrid, Barcelona, Atletico Madrid for 120 million. I know that most teenagers dream of signing for Real Madrid. They've been linked in previously, so whether that plays a factor is yet to be seen. But if he's interested in coming to England, we can give him everything that he wants. We can give him a starting position. We can give him guaranteed minutes. He'll have a fine education at Arsenal in terms of his footballing ability as well, and he can essentially express and grow here. So if he's available and if Arsenal are bold enough to go and get him, then yeah, absolutely, I'd be well on the money with him. But again, Neves, my opinion, brilliant footballer, just waiting for that move to really elevate in levels.
All right, so gentlemen, we've gone through, I think, every position. I'm looking to see if I've missed anybody. But I'm going to ask you this. I mean, we've seen Tavares is in, Fakonga's in. They've both impressed. It looks like Ben White is just a matter of, he'll be announced in the next 2-3 days. That seems like it's done. I think you were mentioning he may have already begun the process of processing with Arsenal. It's definite. It's clear he's an Arsenal player. I don't think there's any doubt that we're going to wake up tomorrow and see somebody's come in and hijacked it. That's done. But we're looking at three positions. So we have three players. So here's my question for you, because again, we're entering injury time in the pod. Abraham and striker, Madison as another number 10 with Emile Smith-Rowe, and either Neves or Camavinga as Thomas Partey's pivot partner to take the pressure off Lokonga, as exciting as he looks. Of those three, by the end of the window, how many of those three do you expect to join Arsenal? Take a shot.
All three.
Okay. So if Neves Camavinga, then I gave you four names, but if Neves Camavinga, which one?
Neves.
Okay. Sam, looking at three positions, three potential buys, how many of those do you think Edu will bring in and Richard Garlick will bring in by the end of the window?
I'll say three, but I'll also throw another one into the mix.
Okay.
Potentially Ramsey and Laka swap.
Oh. We haven't talked about Aaron Ramsey. I mean, we talk about him a lot in the group, but we haven't put him on the pod. So you brought him up. Let's discuss him, because there are pros and there are cons. Obviously, the pros, he's played for Arsenal. He loved his time at Arsenal. He was very productive for Arsenal. He fits that senior leadership profile. He's very versatile, I think, which Arteta's going to want. And obviously the con, he's injury prone. But if you put it in that context, tell me about it as a swap partner for Lacazette. Suddenly he looks a lot more valuable, at least to my eyes. Start with you, Sam.
Yeah, so if you're looking at a swap, obviously you're going to have Lacazette's wage as essentially a free wage that you can potentially instantly assign to Aaron Ramsey. I am of the believing that he will take a wage cut, because obviously we know about the increase of wage when he joined Juventus on the free. So if he takes the wage cut, essentially assign Lacazette's wage to him, that's that covered, done, dusted, covered. In terms of Ramsey as a positive in Arsenal, he knows Arsenal inside out. He's a leader because he's captained Arsenal before. He knows Mikel Arteta extremely well. Arteta knows what he can bring. He is the type of midfielder that Arsenal have been screaming out for, goal-scoring midfielder. With a lack of Europe, essentially you're playing once a week plus training. So he hasn't got that excess stress that he used to have playing Saturday, Wednesday all the time. he doesn't need to be overly exerted because we've got other options in that midfield area as well, especially if we bring in Neves in addition to. So essentially, he can be a role model to, say, Aziz coming through. He can mentor Lokonga coming through. He can be a senior go-to within the squad, the bridge between Arteta and the squad, essentially. And he is somebody that will come to the club and think, I've got unfinished business. Now, a lot of people will say, oh, we need to move on from him, but people need to realise you need clubmen at the club as well. And without these clubmen to install the key values of the club into the squad, you've already half lost the battle. So bringing him in my opinion, is a no-brainer.
Ryan, I think back to the time when he left Arsenal. It was announced that he was not going to come back. It was announced that he was going to go to Juventus. The club wanted to give him a proper send-off, but I recall because he was injured at the end of the year. So he was being introduced at his final home match at the Emirates, standing up in the stands in a suit. I mean, it seems like this is a chance for Arsenal to not send him away, but kind of readmit him properly, so to speak.
Yeah, I still maintain if he doesn't get injured, that towards the end of that season we win the Europa League. He was vital for that run, and getting injured in the semi-final was heartbreaking. But yeah, it's a hard one because all of the memories and all the moments that he brought to us, the two final winners, but then, as Sam said, it's really a no-brainer because he just gets it. He gets the club. You see when he was leaving, he was crying. I don't think he wanted to leave, personally. I think the contract got taken away from him and he was like, okay, I'll find someone else. So, and if we can get rid of Lacazette at the end of the day for Ramsey, I think that is something we should look at.
Well, also, again, just from a roster perspective, there's your space. You guys were just mentioning a couple of minutes ago. You do think Arsenal will pursue Tammy Abraham. Well, moving, obviously, Nketiah is probably going to be sold. But then being able to move Lacazette's contract, which looks like a real obstacle, there it is. The obstacles, your striker target is clear. You can go for Tammy Abraham. And again, you talk about players who have unfinished business. We haven't really talked about him as joining Arsenal. Why don't we wrap it up there? Was a player who was being somewhat productive for Chelsea under Frank Lampard, but when they changed managers mid-season, his playing time disappeared. I think you're going to get somebody who's hungry. Are you not? I'll start with you, Ryan.
Yeah, absolutely. He's going to be chomping at the bit to prove Tuchel wrong, and that is the most dangerous player. Someone who's got something to prove, and that chip on the shoulder where he wants to beat someone, especially in their own league. As we saw with Van Persie, he made it hell for us every time we played them. Like, he'd score every time. So having Abraham, who's only 23, who's still improving. I see a lot of stuff online about he's not clinical enough, blah, blah, he doesn't suit our style. The guy scored 23 goals for Bristol City. If he could score that many for them, he could score that many for us with the attacking quality we have. So I think he's going to be, if we sign him, I think he'll be even 40 million, I think could end up being a bargain.
And Sam, it's not 40 million up front. This looks like a loan with obligation. So even from the business side, it looks like, as you said several times, it looks like almost a no-brainer. But then again, height, you can play with his back to the ball. Just another dimension Arsenal really haven't had since early, say, Giroud. But this is a far more athletic specimen than Giroud.
Yeah, definitely. And people, if they follow the pod account, probably will notice that we said that Arteta was looking at a different type of striker. I think this was going back to March time. So if you follow the timeline since then, we've been linked to Venkors, Alexander Isk, now Tammy Abrahams. three very distinct, different types of strikers. So they're all tall, they're all athletic in one way or another, and they're all clinical on their day. And I think with Tammy Abraham, I don't think Chelsea fans will be that happy to let him go, because if you look at Chelsea, sometimes they need that direct person up front. For them, now that Giroud's gone to AC Milan, that will be Tammy Abrahams. But if he's going, they've got no plan B, essentially. With Tammy as well, I think that he can follow the trajectory of Lukaku, because he's only 23. I don't think that he's physically grown into his frame yet. He won't hit that till about 25. And if Arteta can get more coaching into him in regards to playing on the half turn, using your body correctly, we could have an absolute monster on our hands. And especially with his height being, 6'3", 6'4", the aerial prowess, regardless of whether or not it's in our own area, that gives us the added height that we lack on set pieces. In the opposition area as well, we can really attack with the crossing, getting on the end of it. He's got a knack of scoring goals you just wouldn't expect him to score. So for me, alone with obligation, 40 million would potentially be the question mark. But if you've got the potential of looking back on that in, say, 3-4 years' time, go, absolute bargain. Because essentially, you've got to think as well, with English players, there is an added tax to it. And he's proven in this league that he can score goals. And if you think about it, when he was at Chelsea, when they had the embargo, I think he scored 15 goals. That Chelsea side wasn't a great side, to be perfectly honest, but he made them into challengers because he just got on to the end of things that you wouldn't expect him to. And if he's got that knack for us, he could really propel us up the league.
All right, and gentlemen, we've been talking about this. We watch this in the week to week. And Tierney, you have somebody who throws a lot of quality crosses into the box. And when Chambers was playing on the right, he was also very good at lobbing crosses into the box. And we've lamented all these matches where you have people like Lacazette sitting in the box. They're not going to beat anybody with their height, or Nketiah, who's just doesn't have the muscle to do that. This is a team that's really built, it seems, for somebody with a presence in the box, and that's missing. So again, as you guys have both predicted it's going to happen, let's see what happens. Let's see how many of those three big targets do come in, and there still is time. A lot to digest, but we've covered a lot of ground here. We want to thank all of you out there who have joined us and stayed with us through this pod. We appreciate your support. Follow us on Twitter at Daily Gooner Pod. Follow Ryan at Daily Gooner Ryan. I'm Daily Gooner Ref, obviously Daily Gooner Sam, our individual pods. Come back next week. Next Tuesday, we hope to have some more news of signings. Obviously, we hope to brag on Ben White's debut, or at least practices with the squad, and perhaps some more outgoings, and hopefully more incomings. Until then, for the three of us, we want to thank you and bid you